Hello and welcome to a new episode of Convert on Shopify. My name is Pancho Mendiola, and today we have a super special guest, Johann Van Tonder. So he's the chief of operations of a really big agency. Well, an agency that focuses on big e-commerce called AWA. You'll tell this guy knows his CRO stuff. He knows a lot. And also, I'm really glad that he's willing to share a lot of information. We actually have already booked like 9 conversations for 9 different episodes. So we're going to have him around for quite a while. And I'm really grateful for that. And today we started by talking about the problem. Okay, so I won't spoil you, and let's just jump right in. So hey, Johan, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know that you have a busy couple of, I don't know, weeks, months. So thank you. We really appreciate your time here. And today I want to discuss this topic. So we know, and we have been discussing it in the podcast, that conversion is the way to go, focusing on conversion. Yes, we need to keep paying attention to our traffic sources and all of that, pay-per-click campaigns. But right now, it's really important. If we want to get a bang from our bucks, we need to focus a lot more on conversion. When we hear that, we tend to want to run and already start fixing things. But I think conversion needs to start with a problem, right? Like, what do we fix? And I see a lack of structure in defining that problem. And I know that you like that topic. So would you tell us a little bit about how should we approach problem definition?
Pancho, the reason I like that topic, and it's not that I like that topic, it's just that I agree with you. It's a massive issue. Frankly, I'm surprised at how frequently I run into that issue. I speak to a lot of CRO teams, a lot of testing teams, and this is something that comes up far more often than it should. And I think it's a human tendency. I think our brain, for whatever reason, is wired in that way. We want to jump straight into solutions. I think also, and we talk a little bit in a moment, I'm sure we'll talk about what it looks like in a CRO program or an experimentation program and how we can do it slightly better. But I think, one, the human brain is perhaps wired that way. Two, I think the way we are taught in schools and even in college and universities, I think it sort of reinforces that thinking, problems thinking. And I think we also tend to reward that behavior, right? So a good trait is problem-solving abilities, problem-solving skills. That's something you put on your CV.
Of course.
It's something you put in a job spec and you look for. Nobody puts down the ability to think about a problem. That's not behavior you're going to reward. And also when you look at common KPIs, experimentation program KPIs, CRO KPIs, and I'm not talking here about the test KPIs, the overall program KPIs. Again, the kind of things that get measured and get rewarded, apart from the normal uplift and all of that, you might look at the number of tests, so velocity. You might look at the number of ideas generated, that sort of thing. What isn't looked at is the number of tests not run, the number of ideas considered but disqualified, and the number of hours spent thinking about stuff. And here's the crux of it. There's a great quote. It's attributed to Albert Einstein. He probably never said it. There's a bit of a question about whether he actually said it, but it's a great quote. And it summarizes what we're talking about here. He said, or was meant to have said, if you give me an hour to solve a problem, I'll spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes actually solving it. And it's that thing. We tend to do it the other way around, and we tend to get rewarded for doing it the other way around. So we tend to jump, as you said, we jump straight into that solution before we've got a proper handle on what it is that we're solving for in the first place.
That's a great quote, and yeah, I totally agree if with Einstein, if he actually said that. So let's give a very clear example. So you are in front of a dashboard, right? And you have tons of metrics. You're just staring at just a massive amount of data, and there's problems. I mean, there's problems, but what would be the correct approach? Because yeah, I understand that if we take a test, for example, somebody took the time to create a problem so we can solve it, and that's what we get rewarded for, right? But the issue is that who writes that problem? Like who is the person that writes the set of questions in a business, and where do we start? And I mean, also, like, what's the correct approach to start asking for these types of questions?
Well, straight off the bat, there's not just one approach, not just one right approach. But you spoke about writing the problem, and I think that's the starting point here. Is that most often that problem isn't written down. That problem is at best in your head somewhere or in somebody's head, but actually, usually that's not even the case, or often that's not even the case. So often, and as I said, I'm really surprised that often I see this. This is a common thing. It's not a kind of an outlier. It's a universal observation. We're solving a problem that doesn't exist. So we're coming up with a solution in search of a problem that doesn't exist, or we're solving the wrong problem, or we're solving a problem and creating another one because we didn't think it through, or we're solving the right problem but for the wrong group of people. That happens as well. And this, where all of this starts, sort of the golden thread through all of this is going back to what we said at the beginning, jumping straight into solutions, coming up with an idea about something in this context to test, the visible stuff. And there were a couple of scenarios. You might recognize some of this. So an instruction or a request lands on your desk, maybe from a colleague or from somebody higher up in the organization, and it says, please do X, please do this. Or maybe a step slightly better than that is please test X. So here's an idea, please test it, or please do it. And maybe there's some detail around what that test should look like, maybe even a wireframe. But that's not enough. Like, what are we doing here? What is the why? And I often ask teams this, and if you look, you can do this exercise right now. Look at a test that you're busy running at the moment, or look at all of your tests that you're running at the moment. Look at the tests on your roadmap and ask that question of each test. Why are we running this, or why are we planning to run this? Don't let yourself get away with a stupid answer like, it's to improve conversion rate, to reduce bounce rate, to improve AOV or revenue. That's not specific enough. That's not clear enough. The question is, what problem are you solving for your users? And here's, you asked me about an approach. If you do nothing else, then at least do this. People buy because they have needs, right? That's basic marketing. Now take that a step further. And when you look at your data and you look at test ideas, you look at your insights, and you're in that process where you're coming up with hypotheses, things to test. Think about, what is it that the user is trying to do? What is it that they're trying to get done in their lives, in their day, on your site, on your app? What is it that they're trying to get done? What are their goals, their objectives? And what gets in the way of them achieving those goals, objectives? That's a problem. Now, you still don't know why. You still don't know why that problem is happening. You still don't know why they can't achieve their objectives, why things are going wrong. You simply have made the observation that they're trying to get stuff done and something has gone wrong, or maybe there's an opportunity to improve the way they are trying to get stuff done. That's a really good starting point, even if you do nothing else. Now you have the foundation of a problem.
That's awesome. So thinking on how we can improve not only the user experience, which is like kind of the the technical stuff, but yeah, like the wants and needs and questions and all, like, yeah, when I try to purchase a product, I always first of all, yeah, I am looking for something. I'm not quite sure what I'm looking for, but often when I make the purchase is because a brand took the time to give me enough information in a lot of formats, let's say maybe written formats like the dimensions and stuff like this, but also with video content, with like ways how to use it, how to take care of it. So the brand actually took a lot of time to give me this information, and this drives me. Well, at least I don't know if I am that type of user. I do my research, I take my time, I compare other stuff, I read reviews, but I consider myself also as a power user. So I buy everything online, like pots and pans and everything. Not just like gadgets and fancy stuff, right? And I think from the power user perspective, which is the type of users you want, right? You want people that'll actually already buy. That's super important, and that's where you need to start focusing on, right?
Well, I think this is a key point, Pancho, that you make. There is, who are those users? Who are? If I think most people, most brands, most entrepreneurs will say, "I know my customers," and maybe a few will admit that they really don't, and maybe a few do, but they're in the minority. So I say to you, if you think you know your customers, then write down, humor me, write down on a piece of paper what you know about your customers. If what you wrote down, look at what you wrote down, if that is mainly demographics, uh, gender, age group, income, where they live, and so on, if that's what you wrote down, I'm sorry, you don't know your customers, because demographics and all that stuff you wrote down isn't what drive people to act. It's our behaviors, our needs, and our preferences, our fears, our concerns. Those are the things that drive us to act. Now, maybe what you wrote down includes some of those things. So it's not just demographics. You actually have an idea of what is it that make people buy, and that's what you've written down. Then the next step is to treat those as assumptions, and then to go and validate those assumptions. And what you'll discover is that some of those assumptions you spot on, some of them you're a little bit wrong and it doesn't matter, but others need to be completely adjusted. And once you've adjusted them, it completely changes the way you think about maybe your entire business, but certainly the problems you try and solve. And different customers, different people have different needs, different things worry them. You use the word or the phrase power users. So that I would agree with you, but power users in my business have very different needs compared to power users in your business. And we've often seen this even within the same category. So let's say, and we can narrow that down, and we've seen this. So let's say sport apparel, two different brands in the same geographic region that sell sport apparel. You'll find that just because the customer base is so different, what works on one brand doesn't work on the other. People have different needs. One of the things, and it's almost a joke, is looking at competitor websites and then getting inspiration, so shall we say, getting inspiration about what to test from looking at competitor websites. The problem with that, well, there are many problems with that, their customers aren't your customers. What is it that make people buy from you and not from them? That's what, the nuances you should be looking at. And of course, again, what we're talking about here today is by looking at a competitor website and then just testing some inspiration that you took from it, or by testing any CRO hack, any idea, anything that you picked up on a blog post about here are 10 things you should be testing. Again, it's ideas, it's solutions that aren't connected to problems that your users may actually have. And the reason that's such a weak foundation is there's a massive opportunity cost on that. There's always limited bandwidth in terms of what you can test, limited number of testing slots, number of engineers that can dev these things. number of people that can execute it, number of tests you can run on a site in a year, and you should really think about what is the best use of that opportunity, of that slot, of that 2 weeks or a month, whatever the test is going to be live for. And it starts by understanding what I said earlier. Now we can move slightly a step ahead. Earlier I said the starting point is, what are my customers trying to get done, and what goes wrong in them trying to do that, right? So that's the foundation of a problem. Now the second bit is, who's impacted? So who are those users? And it's not just my customers. There's no such thing as an average customer. We all know this. If you're going to be creating a customer experience for the average customer, really you're creating an experience for a customer that doesn't exist, because the average customer doesn't exist. So you've got to be clear about who is experiencing this issue. And then the third thing is, how does it impact the business? And a lot of businesses, a lot of entrepreneurs start there. So they look at their business KPIs and they say, well, I've got to solve this. You said earlier, there's a UX problem, maybe there's a conversion rate or bounce rate, whatever the metric you're looking at, it's a business KPI, it's a business problem. But that's really only the third thing. That comes right at the end. The KPIs that you look at and all those beautiful graphs and percentages and numbers in GA and analytics and so on, remember that that's just a reflection of user
the outcome,
behavior,
right? That's the outcome that reflect exactly.
And it's the behavior that you want to change. So you start with what's going on in the life of my customer. Number two, who exactly is affected by this? Which customers? Which groupings? And number three, what is the impact of my business? And you string it together like that. And actually, that framework that I've just given you there, those three things, that's what makes what's called a problem statement. And if you Google that, or maybe we can put in the show notes, there are many examples of problem frameworks, problem statements, how you write a problem statements, but it's those three things.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. And what you're saying, I completely agree, because it has happened to me. So we launched a couple of years this nootropics brand, so we're focusing on this type of high productivity type of people and whatever. And we said, hey, so a lot of this type of people are also getting into the keto diet, so we created another brand and like focused on keto stuff, keto products. And we said it's the same people, it's exactly the same customers. So we took the exact same approach with like phrasing. We even send them like ads, to those people, and we didn't achieve anything. And then we realized, with the nootropics, they're trying let's say like an easy solution, even like kind of like a hack for their problems. And with keto, it's a whole other approach. It's discipline. It's it's like it's a diet. It's something that you have to be like super constant. It's just another way to solve a problem. Maybe it is the same demographics, but it's not the same way to approach them, to get to them. It's not the same. It was super obvious for us at the beginning, like, yeah, they're the same. But we didn't do those steps at the beginning. So would you say that even before testing, I don't know, like a correct methodology to follow is like Canvas, like a Canvas model where you have super clear your customer journey and their problems, and then you can start thinking about problems. Or which one would you recommend?
Yeah, I think there are in terms of the methodology, in terms of the process that you follow, the exact steps. There are different ways to do this. So you can have a canvas, you can have a mirror board, you can have a table, a template. For me, it matters less how you do it and more that it's done. And actually, the way I do it personally, and I'm not in the trenches every day, but in my practice, how I would do it is write it down on a piece of paper, even as lo-fi as that, or in a document. But the difference is this: it is out of your head and on a piece of paper. You've thought about it, and you've clearly documented exactly what is the problem, what goes wrong in people's lives, in your users' lives, or in this journey. And it's an assumption at that stage, and you've got data that points to it. And then you can think about who is impacted and all the things that we spoke about before. But it's how you write it down doesn't matter as much as that you've written it down. And of course, then the next step is the hypothesis. And the hypothesis, the formulation of the hypothesis becomes a lot easier when it flows out of this problem framing step, because now you understand what the problem is that you're trying to solve. And you've really, with a problem statement, you're forming a theory about how the world works and a bit of a snag in how it works. With the hypothesis, you're taking it a step further and you're saying, here's how we believe we can solve that. We might be wrong, but it is, we believe X will lead to Y, and this is how we'll measure it. So the one follows logically from the next. And that's another mouthful, is talking about hypotheses. But what I can tell you is often hypotheses go wrong as well. In fact, I've traced back problems, fundamental problems in experimentation programs, trace that back to the hypothesis step. Skipping it or treating it as a tick box exercise and not really understanding how to do it properly. And often the reason for that is because exactly what we've been talking about the last 10, 15 minutes is the problem isn't clear. It's that foundation. If it's not there, the rest of the system is weak. It's as weak as its foundation. And this is the foundation.
All right. So focus on finding the best possible problem, and that might lead you to a really good solution, right?
Well, you might not even have the best problem. That's an entirely different topic. And let's assume there's the universe of problems, potential problems is so big. I think it's almost impossible to put your finger on the biggest problem at any given time. That's not an issue. But it's the opportunities that you've identified and the testing ideas that you've identified, as long as you're clear about what problem it is that you're solving in that moment, and you've given it proper space. You've spent the 55 minutes just dealing with that, thinking about that, even though you're not going to be rewarded for it because that's not what measured. What you're doing is you're focusing on outcomes as opposed to outputs. Not doing stuff to look busy, but doing stuff to deliver results.
Yeah. And often this is like a guilt that we have as entrepreneurs, right? Like we feel guilty that we're just staring at the ceiling for 50 minutes, and we think that we didn't do anything, but we actually did. We're thinking really hard.
Actually, this is such an important thing. So I say to my team, every day, block off minimum 4 hours. But if you can do more than 4 hours, that's great. And in those 4 hours, nobody can get hold of you. Switch off your notifications. Don't look at Slack. Don't look at email. And what you do in that time is you think about the problems that you're busy solving. And that's a rare luxury that people have. And I think it's actually, if you're able to do that, you work with other people, you're able to offer so much value in that equation, in that relationship, because very few people in their lives have that luxury of being able to just think about problems. And I'm not saying sit and stare at the roof. I'm saying, engage with the problem, look at the data, for a while, for an amount of time. And you've got to be disciplined about this. And this is maybe part of the process that I would recommend as well, is understand in the ideation process, understand when you are in thinking mode, problem thinking mode, and when you are in solution mode. And let's say you've got 2 hours and it's split equally. So you've given yourself an hour to think about the problem and an hour to come up with a solution. Don't allow yourself to think about any solutions. And if solutions come up, just bring it right back to what is the problem that I'm trying to solve here? What does the data tell me? Who's impacted by this? Bring yourself back into the problem space, retain that discipline. And then when you're ready to step into the solution thinking, all of that background that you've done, all of that context will come with you. You'll be able to discover a, different opportunities, different ways of solving that problem. There's never just one way of solving the problem. And what we tend to do is we latch on to the first idea that comes to us. And then we might think, well, we're coming up with different ideas, but actually it's an iteration on the same idea. It's just one idea that we're refining and refining. And actually, that might not be the best idea. But the origin of that, the source of that, the root, the reason why that is going wrong is because we don't have a complete understanding of the entire problem, and therefore we've not thought about it enough.
Awesome. I was thinking that we should do like a problem hat and then a solution hat, and you put your problem hat on and you can't think of solutions with your problem hat on.
That's a really good one. That's a really good one.
No, but
actually, we do in ideation workshops. We do a version of that. But there's the Edward de Bono, the 6 thinking hats, and it's more or less what you're talking about now.
Awesome. Yeah. No, and I'm gonna test that with my team as well. Give them like thinking time, and I'll tell you how that went. And that was an awesome advice. All right. So thank you very much. This was really enlightening, and I'm gonna get also to test it with my team and my processes, and I'm gonna have those hats printed as well. So I don't forget. Awesome. Thank you very much, Johann.
Thanks, Pancho.
Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next one.
Thanks. Good to talk to you.
You too. Well, there you have it. An amazing framework shared by Johann, and I am gonna really put it to practice. I wrote everything down, so I'm gonna test it with my team as well. Thank you very much again for listening. And remember that in Convert.com, you'll find a lot more information about conversion rate optimization. Feel free to reach out, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.